We've all had those times where we think of something really ambitious that we'd like to do, get really pumped up about doing it, but then, once we get started, it turns out to be far more difficult than we ever expected. That seems to be the way it is with everything, from gaining the skills you need to start your dream career to mastering a hobby. Every ambition worth having will take years to accomplish because, obviously, if something only took a few days to do, then everyone would be able to do it. The amount of time and effort that you have to put in is what makes something rare and valuable. But what usually happens is that when you get hit with the realization of just how long the road ahead of you really is, it can feel so unfairly hard that you just want to give up on that thing and try something new that will hopefully be easier. Then you end up doing the exact same thing again when that next thing also turns out to be harder than you thought. Take the example of transforming your body through exercise. The first few weeks of any new workout routine will be engaging just because of the novelty involved. But when people realise that it will take months to have any kind of visible progress, the whole thing starts to feel a lot more daunting. The only way you'll manage to make yourself keep going with things that take such a long time is by finding a way to make yourself like doing them. The good thing is there's a way of doing this that's extremely accessible, and the feeling of being daunted by difficulty isn't something that anyone has to experience, because this feeling doesn't come from the difficulty of what we do, it comes from our reaction to it. Proof of this is that people don't react the same way to the same circumstances. If you showed a group of people a giant mountain in front of them and said to them, "Hey, you've got to get up there, now. I've put a treasure chest full of gold and jewels at the top, and if you don't hurry, a goblin is going to eat them," you'd have some people who reacted with fear to what you've just suggested, and other people who would be like, "Yeah, let's go, I'll show that goblin." And unfortunately, the fearful way of seeing things is the default. It's just the one that comes to us through instinct that we don't have to put any additional thought into. But you can make a conscious effort to change this and make yourself react differently using a technique called reframing. It's called this because just as a picture frame changes the way you see a picture, the context around the situation changes the way you react to it. Think of the situation where someone has some minor muscle soreness. If they think it's because they've been active lately, then they might very well view that as a positive. But if they think they're sore because of some terrifying mystery illness, then it will be viewed as very, very negative. The same situation, thought about in two different ways, creates very different reactions. And this is an idea that goes all the way back to the ancient Stoics. As the Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius said, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. At first, this might sound unrealistic, as though you're practicing self-delusion by telling yourself things are really great when they're really not. But the reason it's more than just telling yourself positive-sounding lies is that there's actually nothing more true about the negative way we usually frame things. That's just the first thing our lazy brains can come up with, and being the first thing you think of doesn't make it right. What actually happens is that the way you think about something is likely to become the truth because it changes the way you behave. So, here are some of the absolute best frames for thinking about challenging personal projects. First, we have the game frame. When the thing stopping you from getting started is the fear of failure, you can overcome it by telling yourself the entire process is a fun game. This takes away the disappointment of failed attempts, as well as the need for instant progress, because your actual goal is to just keep playing the game. The outcome of any individual attempt doesn't matter. As long as you keep making more attempts, you're still succeeding at the goal set by your way of thinking. This way of thinking is great for really challenging situations because it changes difficulty from a frustrating problem into the thing that makes everything fun to do. Now, for times when you're not just facing a challenge to make progress, but you're actually losing progress, the game frame might not be enough. This is when you need to use the Stoic test frame. It works like this. If you let yourself get angry and give up, then you fail the test. If you deal with something well and keep going, then you've passed. The Stoic philosopher Seneca used this frame by seeing setbacks as the gods showing him their favour. He thought that by having things go wrong for him, he was being marked out for greatness. because he was being given the opportunity to overcome those problems and become greater than he ever would have been otherwise. By thinking of setbacks as tests of our character, we can dramatically alter our emotional response to them. The third and final frame I'll mention will actually be very familiar to you. You can probably remember a time when you actually felt really good about how long something would take, when you saw how much of a journey you had left ahead of you and felt really lucky that you still had those experiences yet to come. Like when you see that you still have a lot of chapters left to read in a really enjoyable book. That's how you'll end up feeling when you use this last frame, the story frame, which connects the events that you use the game and test frames for together. A story is so much more inspiring when the main character has to overcome serious challenges. Imagine a main character in a story who never faces any challenges. He's born into an absurdly wealthy family, he has so much natural talent he never needs to work at anything, people just constantly show up to help him and give him the things he needs to succeed, and there are no setbacks whatsoever along the way. If you were reading a book about someone like this, you just end up thinking, what am I doing here? It's not interesting and it's not satisfying. The low points of a story make the high points feel higher, and they definitely don't stop you from wanting to continue. The story frame is about thinking to yourself, what's the best possible way I can respond to this situation to create a great story about myself in the future? To actually get something out of these improved ways of thinking, you have to take action by reminding yourself to think this way, because our lazy brains will keep going back to the default negative thought patterns they're used to without repeated conscious attention. This is why some people will even carry around a coin engraved with the words Amor Fati, which means love fate, to remind themselves to stay in the right frame. Although really these coins are just for if you feel like being fancy about it. You could just as easily have a particular object in your house that you see and use as a cue to ask yourself, how am I framing things? And if you find that you've been letting the difficulty of things get you down, remember that it can instead be a fun game for you to play, a chance to test your character, and the makings of a great story. And that's about it. If you'd like more information on Stoicism in general, then I'd recommend a book called A Guide to the Good Life by William B. Irvine. I recommend this as a starting point because it's very comprehensive as opposed to the original Stoic texts, which focus a lot more on particular aspects of Stoicism. As always, I hope you liked this video, and if you did, then you should click like to help me spread some positivity around. Catch you next time.